Everybody's building ships and boats. Some are building monuments, others counting out floats. Everybody's in despair, every girl and boy. But then when the Eskimo gets here, everybody gonna jump for joy. Come on without, come on within. You not seen nothing like the mighty Quinn. Come on without, come on within. You not seen nothing like the mighty Quinn. If you do what I want to do, can't decide on my own. Just tell me where to put it, and I'll tell you who to call. Nobody can get no sleep, but someone's anyone's dose. But when Quinn the Eskimo gets here, everybody's gonna want a dose. Come on without, come on within. You not seen nothing like a mighty Quinn. Wanna see you come on without, come on within. I don't see nothing like a mighty Quinn. Do what I wanna do. That like my well, just like the rest, I like my sugar sweet. Jumping coons and making haste just ain't my cup of meat. I can get no sleep. Feeding pigeons on the limb. But when Quinn the Eskimo gets here, all the pigeons gonna run to him. It's funny someone calls me Bavarian. My sister has gotten big into the ancestry stuff. She's doing the deal where you click on all the uh, leaves and you follow the, the train. And it's pretty interesting, actually, because it turns out, no, not really Bavarian at all. A lot of Norwegian, actually. But there is obviously a lot of German, and it's near Bavaria. It's like in the Rhineland, the Palatinate, actually, Baden, Württemberg, and in like those the Catholic Protestant sort of liminal space there, but not Bavaria itself. But it is that like the Rhineland is where a lot of the people migrated in the 19th century to the United States, and they traded their white wine for beer. But the most interesting one, and I said this on Twitter when I found out, is that uh, my ninth great grandfather, like ninth great 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 grandfather, was from a small principality in northwest Germany, and in the 30 Years' War, he was a barber surgeon in somebody's army. I don't know whose. So direct familial connection to the 30 Years' War, which is pretty cool. Yeah, the stream yesterday was very fun. I want to keep going because much better. I mean, obviously, I can't take any credit because I said vague stuff like, "Hey, let's attack Transylvania." Like that's it. But doing very well. It's 1658, I think, something around there. So we've gone past the 30 Years' War period. We got to the Peace of Westphalia much earlier, with much more of Germany under Catholic rule, including Saxony, where Beer George was converted to Catholicism. Um, that means that fucking Wittenberg is back under the church's umbrella, which is boss. But then we turned right around, went to war with the Ottomans, rinsed the Ottomans because they were at that point having a war with the Safavids, and they didn't have the wherewithal to split their attention. And we kind of went around through the Black Sea back door and ended up taking the Holy Land. That's right. Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand III taking over for his dad, the Habsburg of Habsburgs, reclaiming the motherfucking Holy Land. Then we took a nice chunk out of Switzerland, including Geneva. And again, this is just racking up the score on the fucking prots. Oh, Geneva, Heartland, well, the place where Kelvin came up with his bullshit. Yoink, welcome back to the bosom of the one true church, bitch. And now we're going to team up with Russia and our Spanish Habsburg cousins to fuck France and Poland. We are going to partition Poland. That's inevitable, but come on. There's no world where the Poland does not get partitioned a million times. Uh, the real leverage, the real historical break we're going to have is that if we succeed in carving up France, taking like Alsace and Lorraine for the Holy Roman Empire, giving a big chunk of like the Basque country and Aquitaine there to Spain, and then turning the rest into vassal states, then it's us, the Habsburgs, the Holy Roman Empire versus the English, the Norwegian. I'm sorry, the English, the fucking Dutch, and the Swedes. So I'm hoping if we beat France, I'm going. My plan would be from there invasion of Ireland, of course. That's always how you get. If you try, the only real way you can get to England is through Ireland. Go there, ally with the local Catholic population, and at this point, the I think in England, in our version of it, the English Civil War has led to a collapse of the monarchy. They got some guy in there, don't even know who the hell it is. So, so the hope here is to exterminate England and, at the very least, suborn the Dutch. As we know from history, the Dutch can be suborned, but the Anglo has to be just definitively broken. And then with Germany being the hegemonic polity of the modern world, you get a nice, clean socialist revolution at the heart of capitalism, where it belonged. So that's the goal, to redirect the flow of historical forces towards Germany and away from fucking England. But if we break up France, humble their asses, then I guess we take. I don't honestly think you take North America, but you become like a trading partner, right? So yes, of course, eventually that means war with Spain and Russia. But come on, the Spaniards, they never had a chance. And you know what? It has nothing to do with their Mediterranean temperament or even the lovely weather. It has a little bit to do with the aridity of the soil in the Iberian Peninsula, but only so far as it led the Spanish, it helped motivate the Spanish to take the big style investment risk of uh, exploration. They were behind the eight ball relative to the other countries in Europe, and they were forced to go west because they were holding on to some scraps of decreasingly arable land. And then the fact that they were first, and the fact that Spain is the first hegemonic uh, uh, state-like thing to emerge after the Roman Empire in Europe, after the fall of Charlemagne, anyway. It meant that it commenced a competition between the other states that now had to orient towards Spain. But Spain was never going to be able to adjust because what gets you to the top is what is going to bring you down. The things that the tools that you use as a state to gain power, to accelerate like past your limitations and create like a new horizon. As soon as that machine has been built, it cannot be reformed meaningfully from within, because the elite power holders who got you there are going to use their position to prevent anyone else from challenging their specific power within the structure. And so that means that, for example, Spain spreads feudalism to the New World, as opposed to approaching the question of colonialism from you know, a from a national or commercial perspective. It becomes simply a process of saying, hey, you know how there are people who hold land and the rights to labor within a certain area in Iberia? We're just going to have you do that in North America or in Latin America. You swear your loyalty to the king, not even to Spain, and then you get to be your own little feudal lord. And so the vast riches of the New World, extracted by the wholesale slaughter of the population, were alarmingly ineffective at helping the Spanish fight off rivals like France and uh, resistance within their body politic, like in the Netherlands. And so Spain just had to sort of drift through this process while France develops the absolutist state. The Dutch developed the first modern commercial economy. The English bring the commercial economy into a constitutional monarchical order. They synthesize all of these processes. Meanwhile, none of these processes are allowed to take place in Spain. And it becomes so embedded that by the 19th century, I was saying this on the stream yesterday, by the time the bourgeois buy out the land of the declining aristocrats of Spain, and the Catholic Church's land is finally put on the market and bourgeois buy it, instead of bringing bourgeois values to landowning like they did in the Netherlands, like they did in England, they start living like aristocrats and just blowing all of their surplus instead of investing it in improving production. Yeah, I definitely have to remember to not siege London. I need to take it immediately. The same thing with Hannibal too. Hannibal, don't don't fuck around. Go attack and take Rome. What is wrong with you? I mean, I'm sure that Hannibal had a good reason not for trying to take Rome, but at the same time, his strategy of like playing whack-a-mole with uh, Rome's allies. I don't know. I don't know if it had a. I don't know what the viability of that was, and obviously it just didn't work. Someone says I'm describing what sounds like our bourgeois too. Precisely. Where this is why all orders collapse, because there is a fix to any exogenous crisis that afflicts a political order. There is a fix, always. There has to be, because humans have the capacity to endlessly rearrange their relationship to nature. We know that. It's just a question of executing it. So we know it's possible. The reason it can't happen in the long run, accumulating crises plus the internal tensions and contradictions within the society will bring about their crisis and collapse. Why they can't respond productively to crisis and instead have to only deepen crisis is because elites will not let go of their particular power. And it would require that to meet crisis. Like when everybody starts fighting the Dutch when they become too dangerous in the 1700s, and like France and England team up against them, the Amsterdam burghers who had built this thing, this incredible machine, helped destroy it because they owned all the boats for one thing, and they didn't want to risk them in battle. They didn't want to pay taxes for the military. Is there an example of it happening? Elites ceding their power to solve the crisis. I'd be interested to see someone maybe put up a potential candidate for that. I think once you reach a certain level of social complexity and hierarchy, you have created a situation where your elites live in a different world than the one that the rest of their society lives in and the one that their society is collectively interacting with nature and other people with. Like they are in a bubble that profoundly dwarfs and warps their experience of the world. Like they're looking through to the other side of a black hole created by their wealth and power. I mean, you could call it mental illness, and in like a strict sense, it is. But of course, it can't be recognized by that because they've a society has been built to uh, select for that kind of mental state. And no one can get in the bubble and stop them is the thing, because they built a system that before anything else prevents that. Other stuff is built on top of those directives, but the prime directive of maintaining that separation is the one that all goals and all energy derives from. Everything else is secondary. And like the story of the rise of the bourgeois in Europe is of the old landowning elite being forced over time to concede, both by the political and military power of the bourgeois as an independent social force, but also, this is the most important part, the necessity of competing with the other European powers. And the only time that like a subaltern class can rise to disrupt power is if they have an alliance with some segment of the elite class. Because the elite class have access to levers of power that move people through social channels. And if you don't have that executive function, your numbers and your energy won't mean anything. Oh, of course, we're going to talk about the transportation of the Acadians in the 7 Years' War podcast. That's an amazing story. They just say, "Hey, you fucking, you guys, you are you French? Are you Indian? We're not really sure. That makes us uncomfortable. Get the fuck out of here. You're going to Louisiana." The difference between being forced and choosing really just comes down to the context, the pressure that they face. Like they will concede power if forced to by another force within their society, working class, for example, organized and around executively functional institutions. But in the absence of that, which is what you usually get towards the end of a cycle of power, They've beaten everybody else off. They've jacked everybody else off. They've diffused every other challenge to their internal authority. Because remember, that's the prime direction of the system. They are then left in a situation where they will either be destroyed or recognize the threat to them existentially, and to the system that they claim to be part of existentially, and then to do something of their own choice to change it. And that's what they won't do, because they cannot conceive of change as anything other than annihilation. Because they know at a deep part, like wrapping around their spine, below conscious thought, they know what they have done. They know their crime. They think of it consciously as the much they fear the other. But that is just a guilt. That is guilt. And it turns into a terror of the other, because if I am brought low, if I am brought down from my status, how could I experience anything other than annihilation? And so if that's the choice, then there is no choice. You keep doing you've been doing, no matter what it does. And that is what's so terrifying about the moment we live in, is that because we have evacuated a faith in any superseding force that could forgive us. And we know that others, if they're as selfish as we are, and we project ourselves into others who are as selfish as we are, could never forgive us for what we've done. Then we will be torn limb from limb and destroyed bodily, and that's it. Like, that's the fear. There is no hope of a greater salvation, so anything but that, basically. And without any social vocabulary for forgiveness at any level, there's no point where that anti solidarity, that magnetic repulsion to other people, and the sense of uh, menace implicit in anyone who is below us. No one's going to change. No one's going to flip. No one is going to push together. Like, yes, like FDR. Somebody's talking about FDR. This is interesting to talk about guys like FDR, because, like, we love to ascribe a all powerful agenda to people at that levels of influence and control. A guy who was U.S. president during this moment when, like, the American Goliath, the real American Goliath, the techno monster that bestrides the globe, was born. Like, you can look back and it's stages of expansion and awareness, and they're all organized around tipping points. And one of the big ones in American history is World War II. Uh, and so, you look at him, and there's this assumption that the neutering of the working class was like the real motivating force behind uh, the New Deal and the emergence of, like, the legalized labor movement. I mean, for one thing, the context of that was that it was a demand that was being made by a coherent and incredibly powerful and incredibly effective working class organization that was making it so that the state couldn't function without its participation. Like, you were talking about, when you're talking about, like, the sit down strikes in Flint, you're talking about not just withholding labor as a group, but as preventing access to, like, huge capital resources by these companies. Like, that is not sustainable. That level of class conflict is not sustainable, because over time, the working class will bring this thing to a fucking halt if there is not a come down. And FDR emerges to sort of negotiate away from that uh, class apocalypse. And yes, that is an important step down the road to the working class uh, uh, political power being emasculated. But for guys in the specific position of like FDR, or the big New Dealer brain trust types like Harry Hopkins, I genuinely think those guys believed, and they had every reason to believe it given their life experiences, that man was being governed more and more by his reason, and that reason applied to the question of economics would eventually lead the most influential and important people in the country and the world to recognize that capitalism would have to be euthanized, that there would have to be a project of defanging capitalism and taking it over. The vision for how to do that was best exemplified in that most advanced of the social democratic states, Sweden, in the 70s with the Meidner Plan. The Meidner Plan was a concept whereby the state was going to, as in lieu of taxes for corporations, was going to take a percentage of stock every year. And that meant that over time, the state would eventually have a controlling interest in every large corporation operating in Sweden. And I really do think that guys like fucking FDR and Henry Wallace and the New Dealers in general, that's how they thought it was going to work out. And they thought they were doing that by every choice they made. Now, was that wrong? Obviously. That's why you need to be a communist. Duh. But just saying you should be a communist is dumb, because people do not come to their politics because of their virtue and insight. It's their life experiences bringing them to a conclusion through experience, not through interacting with intellectual concepts. The intellectual concepts are what you do after the experience has happened. They are the symbols that you clothe your experiences with, are the intellectual and ideological concepts you operate from. But I think at that point, like, you had people even at the very top of power who could imagine a step down. They could imagine stepping down from their specific power position within capitalism to a more egalitarian social relationship and trade that power and money for a greater sense of social and individual security. And of course, eventually, oh, what's this? Hey, we get to flower as human beings for the first time. Wow, that's wild. But of course, not even with it, not even with that. Like, it could be a logical choice that a elite at that period could make. But now that the Third World War has ended, with the final triumph of this capitalism shorn of any resistance within it, nobody at any level of power thinks that there can be a step down. Like, I mean, we got the richest guy on earth freaking out about FBI crime stats every day. And, like, that's not because he's worried about other people. That is because he can only imagine living forever on Mars, maybe, or being stabbed to death by a other, being destroyed by the other. Those are the only deaths that's the only ends that they can conceive of. They're not gonna die of regular human causes. They have the money to prevent that from happening. But they don't have the money necessarily to prevent the system from collapsing. Now, of course, there's plenty of other things that could happen that are being masked by this dichotomy of and neurotic fixation for these people. Like the real reason that Musk is so fixed on danger and crime uh, is not that he's going to have it happen to him, but that he is going to at some point run out of runway on his bullshit. You know, not necessarily going to happen. He has gotten to the point where you could see that him as too big to fail. But there are still plenty of ways that he completely fucks this up. I mean, and I've said before, the failure of AI of self-driving cars is one of the big reasons it might happen. So yeah, I increasingly think uh, that there is a always going to be a horizon for human flourishing that illuminates like our day-to-day experiences and gives us meaning and context and values. But that is a separate question from whether this particular iteration of human experience uh, directly leads there. Yeah, that was funny. They were like, "Hey," they show a video. They showed a video on. They released a video on Twitter of a self-driving car just blowing past this pedestrian. Like, hey, good news! It doesn't stop randomly at shrubs and bags blowing by in the wind anymore. But now it will just measure the life of a person against your need to get to the store on time and just roll the dice. Fact is, no one will trust it. Like, yes, that's what a human would do. A human would just drive by that person who's that far from your part of the street. But we have accepted human responsibility socially for those choices, and those machines cannot take that responsibility. So we will never be able to trust them. It is wild watching these guys just destroy every the '08 crash created a I don't want to say final because that's teleological, overly teleological. Because I have no idea what's going to happen to change the order and continue things, and we can never know what cross currents we're dealing with. Uh, but I will say it does feel like the last burst of a dying engine after '08, when our last like real estate based speculative economy kind of blew up, and we had a choice of like, okay, well, where are we going to dump money now? The answer was Silicon Valley, because that is the next best thing to just pure financial speculation, because there was no more place to uh, productively invest in the United States, because we priced out production in the core. This is just as Marx had predicted would happen. It gets to the point where uh, you are required to put too much capital into machinery automation, and it makes it no longer cost effective to produce. But you can't pay people to do it because the wages relative to the rest of the world are so disproportionately high that in a global market it's not competitive. So where can you dump the money? Into something that is just a bunch of attempts to arbitrage existing elements of the economy and pry money from them. Uber, Netflix, all of them. That's all they could do. And then of course there's the tech economy of like ad driven uh, internet interaction. Like, oh, people are looking at the internet a lot. That means eyeballs. That means this is an advertising space. And then we created the ad dollar, the digital ad dollar, which became the successor to the petrodollar. Like data became for Silicon Valley the thing that backed the transactions and backed the currency and built that insane series of campuses with these wild amounts of money at their fingertips, which they use to create, yes, some technology, but technology that uh, mostly just can be used against the population to surveil them and police them. But none of the breakthroughs that would make the future possible that these guys imagine, like super fast your space travels and and artificial intelligence, they hit a wall on all of that. And they're all hitting the wall simultaneously. That's where we're dealing with right now. Because the thing that allowed this to happen was a zero interest rate environment, which persisted for over a decade. That environment is over. That means that the system that was built by it can no longer deal and cannot, as we've discussed, adapt. So there's going to be this last push to try to bluff their way through by acting like AI and its accompanying innovations and breakthroughs that are going to save us from our spiral of profitability. Bluff through a bridge to a future where they work. That's, I think, what they're all hoping for. Fantasizing they're going to do. But like, even if AI is functional, all it can do is further proletarianize uh, American workers and reduce Americans' buying power at a time when American consumer spending is still the engine of the world economy. Congratulations, you saved some money. Now nobody can buy this bullshit. I don't think we're in the silo because I can see the sun, and you can't see the sun underground. Pretty stupid to think that. Yeah, because like traditionally, my boy Walter Scheidel has a book about this. Traditionally, the one consistent thing that really works to exogenously solve this problem historically, when you have overproduced. We just have way too much stuff. We have way too much debt and way too much hoarded wealth. How do we affect a jubilee? Well, the fantasy that we all have is that we come together collectively, socially, to carry out a jubilee, and that I think is the animating force behind the socialist movement. Is that we can get to a point where we can choose to forgive collectively at every level, spiritually, financially, and clear the slate and reduce the overhang. But traditionally, what it is war. War does that. War destroys the overproduced capital. Sometimes it's a timely plague, but usually it's war. And, to say, well, what does it mean to have a capital destroying war in the context of thermonuclear weapons blanketing the planet? Yikes. Like, we're seeing a very interesting situation, though, because what differs now from '08 is that they have learned that you can't let anybody fail because it will actually spook the horses. They've seen them be spooked before, and they know they'll do it. So with that in their minds, now there is nobody is getting left out. So that's why we've already had instantaneous bailouts. I know people can say they're not bailouts, whatever. Just instantaneous systemic response to collapsing institutions. It does all feel like something just needs that there just needs to be like one push, one thing, and everybody's waiting for it. But I don't know. Maybe the technology has progressed to the point where, yeah, like it's a constant sense of suspended decline without any moment of tension release. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's this default situation. Although you got to figure that, I mean, they will absolutely not. I mean, the Republicans would let it happen for sure, which is the grain of truth in the analysis of the parties that says that the Republicans are like the truly radical party. They're the ones that generally challenge capitalism. It's not because they are based populists. It's not because they have any sort of class analysis of society that would be liberatory, even just for white people, by the way. Like, they don't have a vision that even creates like a white hair invoked democracy. Like, that's not even there. In American right wingery has none of that. It is pure unadorned petty bourgeois resentment. That is it. And people respond to that. Think like a lot of people who are leftists respond to that very deeply. And it's like, yeah, because you're an aggrieved petty bourgeois too. Of course you see that as you understand it. But that's not that is not it cannot be politically productive. When the aggrieved petty bourgeois takes over a political system, it drives it to annihilation. Because, as I've said before, the petit bourgeois cannot have solidarity with anyone. So there can never be a reached out hand that can be grasped. So that means you will either be destroyed or you will be the author of your own destruction. And that is a act, and that is pure in its kinetic will. And so the Republican Party will destroy the economy, will destroy the world system, will put fucking, but not behind any politics that can uh, uh, respond to that productively. My guess is that they will just give them everything. My guess is that they will give them everything, but that still won't get all of the Freedom Caucus people, but it will probably at the very least get like the moderates who just got in. They have been talking about doing a discharge petition, and but even those new moderates, I don't think are going to be able to vote for anything that doesn't have cuts in it and like work requirements and other social sadism. So I could see that happening. I don't think there's any deal that the Republicans en masse would accept for the reason I'm talking about. Like, just like the McCarthy election. To do that, to just say, we have no plan, we have nobody else who we would back, we have no way of having an alternative leadership to McCarthy. We're just going to vote no. And you could doing that once as like a hey, a shot across the bow, like we don't like you thing. Okay. But then to just keep doing it, vote after vote after vote, there is no organization here. There's nothing but the collective death drive of these fucking lunatics and con artists, sociopaths, small business tyrants. They just know. And again, people look at that no and they see a heroic, because it's something. Even though it is just this suicidal death drive, it speaks to some desire to shape one's own life, some desire to assert autonomy in the face of the onrushing history. The problem the liberals have, and the left largely too, whatever the hell that means, like just people who self-describe as leftists, is that there's this understanding that the system as such does not work, cannot work, is only getting worse. But also, all of the institutions that make up this system must be upheld, must be validated. And that means you must be, in the face of them, passive, basically. I mean, people are wondering, like, why didn't they raise the debt ceiling before the Republicans got in? They could have done it during the fucking lame duck, or they could have done it before that. And Biden said, no, that's wrong. But I gotta wonder, would they have not been able to do it? Like, would guys like Manchin have said, no, on principle, we can't raise it without doing something about the debt? And so they just said, it wouldn't be right to cover for the impotence of the White House. So that's why people want to talk about, Biden's what Biden wants. Is Biden really a neoliberal? How can he be for work requirements now after doing the child tax credits earlier in his administration? This is incoherent. That's correct, because there is no presiding ideology. There is not even a plan, an evil plan. Like the Democrats, the true believers will insist that there is a good plan with a good long-term agenda the Democrats have. There is a mirror argument that says, no, they have a bad plan that's bad for us. I think the truth is that there's no plan anywhere in any of the parties because the organs of planning have been uprooted and dissolved by the last 40 years of American politics, in which money has completely overwhelmed the process and all countervailing democratic accountability institutions have been dissolved in it. So it's like, the Democrats, they want to cut entitlements. They could have, some of them probably do, but there's no generalized goal for anybody. There's just a bunch of self-seeking freaks, the kind of empty monsters who went into politics at this point in history. And like that is why one of my single least favorite genre of political writing, worse than anything, are articles that give the Democrats advice on what to do. Like say, like Democrats need to play tough on the debt ceiling negotiations or anything like that, because you are abetting a lie bigger than anything that the Republicans claim to believe. Whatever you talk all day about disinformation and the monstrous lies that the Republicans feed their idiot base and the paranoid style. But if you're going out there acting like, oh yeah, there's somebody who can make a decision to activate a tactical plan of action that is going to that has something in common with like the general Democratic voters' agenda, economic agenda or social agenda, you're lying to them and to the audience and yourself. And that's why I've gotten to the point where I'm not mad. I can't get mad at them anymore because they're just flesh wads. They are organic. They're organic circuit connectors. Like they exist to move the electricity through the system. Like there has to be like bio nodes between the electrical transmission, the signal. The algorithm needs meat puppets. We are the hollow men. We are the stuffed men. I think like one of my very first Kush vlogs back at the fuck during quarantine. I think I read that. I think I read that's from the Wasteland, right? No, that's sound poem. Leaning together, headpiece full of straw. Oh God, Killer of the Flower Moon. Hey, you know what? The political system is completely intractable, and we're frozen. We have our choice of kinetic, self-defining action in service of a nihilistic aggression, or fetishize and moralize our paralysis and failure to act. That's your political options. But God damn it, there's a new Scorsese. It's going to drop. The trailer looked fire. Very excited for it. Yeah, that's the really is the mark of a good director. Do they want to make anything contemporary? And if they do, they either are poisoned with hubris or just don't have that much imagination. Oh man, that's a good question. Will there be a good COVID movie? I cannot imagine. And obviously, you see, nobody wants to make one. There were a few attempts to address it directly while it was happening, and people were dealing with more of the restraints of shooting with COVID precautions. But as soon as that lifted, everyone's like, "We're just going to forget this happened." And I mean, I'm not. I of course I try to forget too, because what do you get from remembering? Like you get the satisfaction of being more aware of the horror that happened than everybody else. And yeah, like if you follow more close COVID personal COVID protective regimes, you're less likely to get it again if you've gotten it or for the first time. But there's no way to commiserate about it. There's no way to build a meaningful politics around it. Like the only COVID politics that have persisted are the ones around petty bourgeois resentment. What a shock. Which is why RFK for me is a non-starter. Like obviously it doesn't matter, and people who are still looking for a presidential primary savior, given our experience, have willfully deluded themselves. But yeah, if you want to keep people thinking about COVID, the only lens left that can socially reproduce that into like images and like concrete ideas around it is the id rage of people who were mildly inconvenienced. All the real horror, all the lasting horror, cannot be politically metabolized. It'll be interesting. I mean, even the we love to document our recent past. We've got the new thing where brands and events have taken over the role of IP for adult films, films for adults, rather. And there, even something as relatively dry as the 2008 collapse has had several films: Margin Call, uh, Smartest Guys in the Room, uh, The Big Short. Uh, there was a HBO movie where Giamatti played Ben Bernanke, I think. I don't know if we're going to ever get anything like that on COVID. I don't know if anybody wants that. We'll see. It'll probably be a few more years for sure. Wolf of Wall Street isn't actually really about the '08 collapse. In fact, I remember Matthew Iglesias complained. He said, "If you want to make a movie about the crisis, why would you make it about this guy who was scamming people on penny stocks? That's not the story of the '08 collapse." It's like, well, who gives a shit about that? Like, that's not what a guy like Scorsese cares about. The specifics. There's the literally every time that DiCaprio starts explaining the actual way that his scam works, he would just go like, "You don't give a fuck about that." He is at like, who does something like that? Who populates this economy? Who responds to the incentives that we're making? What's going to fail first, banks or commercial real estate? I mean, commercial real estate looks like it's in real trouble, and I don't know if the mechanisms of bailing it out are as well lubricated as they are for the banking sector. I would, of course, love to see a 900-year-old Clint Eastwood make a COVID movie. That would be very fun. I don't know. This might be somebody's asked about the entertainment industry now, with maybe even SAG striking. I mean, I think that SAG and WGA are right to strike now. I do think that the AI solutions these people are imagining cannot work the way they want them to, but nobody's going to figure that out until they've destroyed the entire industry. Like, they will destroy the industry pursuing these AI fixes, and then they will be just be gone. Uh, so they do have to stand up now, but like, I don't know if the studios feel like they're in a position to make any kind of deal. I said, I'm sorry, WGA, not the DGA, of course not. Directors aren't going to fucking stick their neck out for anybody. Come on. It's amazing though. Like, de-skilling is the prime directive of automation. It's not to relieve people of labor. It is to remove monetizable, leverage-bearing skill from laboring, from the specific laborer. And it's like, what's going to fill that gap? I think it's just going to be more. Uh, it's just going to be maybe a leveling up of like social media elements and like parasocial entertainments. It does feel like there still need to be like flagship entertainment productions. Honestly, they should be seen as loss leaders. Because if we don't have entertainment, we don't have anything. Like that is not to get too Neil Postman about it, but the thing that all of this is designed to produce. Yes, profit, obviously. That is what it's meant to produce. But like that the profit motive like made legible to human life to be to be materialized and incarnated is to be entertained. Like it is not like life is not to be is it's not a contest of will and of overcoming obstacles and asserting one's individuality in the face of the world that they encounter and to have their labors be acts of will. It is to consume, yes, obviously, but specifically to consume stories about why this is all good and why we should be doing this and why you don't need to have any kind of control over your life because these stories are telling you exactly why the world is the way it needs to be. And the fact that we're seeing these load bearing institutions being undermined, this is what happens when capitalism is not in context of resistance from something outside of it. It will eat itself. And it will dissolve from within its own institutions in the search for any morsel of profit in a context of declining profit margins. Or not profit margin, profits in aggregate. Because obviously there's all-time high profit rates, profit margins right now in all these sectors, uh, but they're just being dissolved from within. It's all getting eaten up, and our elites can no longer invest profitably, so they just conspicuously consume. Like we've got now a bunch of Spanish aristocrats and debauched bourgeois. The investment mechanism that's supposed to keep capitalism one step above the Malthusian wolf is investment, which creates new advances in technology and efficiency. So who knows? Who knows? It's certainly an interesting time to live. And you know what? We're all going to make sense of it one way or the other. We're all coming out the other end of this. And I think we will all end up in a field laughing at how silly it was that we ever were so scared. But that's me. I'm a kook. Bye bye.